The universe held its breath at exactly 1400 hours, station time. Korth's 4 eyes dilated as Crimson Emergency, lighting transformed Birch Point Station into a cathedral of alarm. The Deep Space Research Facility's corridors pulsed with urgent scarlet, casting long shadows that danced across brushed metal walls like specters of impending doom. Around him, the symphony of panic began its familiar crescendo. Tilic voices rose in chittering staccato, their distress calls weaving through the metallic groans of the Vorthak engineer, whose massive frame shuddered with each labored breath. The station AI's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk, cold and precise. Attention all personnel. Primary life support failure detected. Backup systems compromised. Estimated breathable atmosphere remaining. 5 hours, 47 minutes. 5 hours. The words echoed in Korth's mind as his gaze drifted to the nearest viewport, where the infinite void stretched beyond the station's hull like a canvas of absolute darkness. Stars hung suspended in that emptiness, beautiful and indifferent, while somewhere in the distance, rescue ships moved too slowly through the cosmic night. 8 hours minimum. The mathematics of survival carved themselves into his consciousness with brutal clarity. Yenth, the Tilic communications officer, pressed closer to him, her iridescent carapace reflecting the emergency lights in prismatic fragments. This is it, we're going to die out here. But then, cutting through the orchestrated despair like sunlight through storm clouds, came a sound that made Korth's brain stumble over its own certainty. Whistling. Someone was actually whistling a cheerful melody, the notes dancing through the air with casual defiance. Jess materialized in the command center's doorway like a force of nature, wrapped in engineering coveralls. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved. Her toolbox swinging gently at her side, while a portable scanner gleamed in her other hand. Stains of various lubricants decorated her uniform like badges of honor, and a piece of twisted metal wire protruded from her breast pocket like a mechanical flower. She set her toolbox down with a metallic clank that seemed to punctuate the station's emergency symphony. Morning, everyone. Heard we've got a little ventilation problem. A little ventilation problem. Korth stared at her with the kind of fascination reserved for watching meteors streak across alien skies. The human was treating catastrophic life support failure like a minor inconvenience, her voice carrying the same casual tone one might use to discuss weather patterns. Captain Vorthen stepped forward, his usually steady voice tight with the kind of stress that made seasoned commanders question their own competence. Jess, the entire atmospheric processing system is down. Primary generators are offline. Backup power is failing. Jess was already transforming her toolkit into a surgical array, laying out instruments with the practiced precision of a concert pianist preparing for performance. Aha! What's the power situation looking like? The Vorthak engineer's massive hands trembled as he consulted his readings. 17% and dropping. We have maybe 30 minutes before total system failure. Plenty of time. Jess selected a plasma cutter with the casual grace of someone choosing dessert from a menu. I'm going to need someone to meet me at junction box 7 in about 10 minutes. Bring a standard toolkit and maybe a fire extinguisher. She moved toward the door with purposeful strides, pausing only to retrieve what appeared to be a roll of silver material from her toolbox. The substance caught the emergency lighting and reflected it back in metallic waves. Yenth's voice cracked with disbelief. That's it? That's your plan? Silver tape. Jess turned back, and her grin was a thing of terrible beauty, somehow managing to be both reassuring and absolutely terrifying. Oh, this isn't tape. It's emergency hull sealant. Works great on ventilation ducts, too. She vanished into the corridor, leaving the assembled crew staring after her like witnesses to a miracle they couldn't quite comprehend. Korth had worked alongside humans for 3 years. He thought he understood their species: reliable engineers, competent pilots, surprisingly adept at improvising solutions under pressure. But this transcended understanding. This was watching someone treat certain death like routine maintenance, approaching the impossible with the same casual confidence others reserved for daily tasks. Captain Vorthen's voice carried the weight of command decisions made in the shadow of catastrophe. Should we start preparing emergency pods? The Vorthak engineer's readings told a story written in declining numbers and failing systems. Pods are designed for 4-hour maximum duration. Rescue is still 8 hours out, so we're definitely dead if we abandon ship. Korth's voice carried the mathematical certainty of their situation, but we're probably dead if we stay. Actually, a new voice cut through their calculations like a warm breeze through winter air. You're probably fine if you just let me work. Everyone turned. Wade stood in the doorway, younger than Jess, but carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen impossible things become routine. His dark blue security uniform contrasted sharply with the emergency lighting, and his expression held the kind of calm that came from absolute faith in human capability. Captain Vorthen's voice carried hope disguised as professional inquiry. "Wade, what's your assessment?" Wade settled into a monitoring station chair with the casual grace of someone discussing mundane station business. "Jess knows what she's doing. I've seen her fix a damaged warp core with spare parts from a food processor. This is basically Tuesday for her. A food processor?" Korth couldn't prevent the question from escaping. "Long story. Point is, she's got this." Wade's fingers danced across the monitoring controls with practiced ease. "Might want to make sure everyone stays away from Deck 4, though. She's going to be doing some creative rewiring." The next hour unfolded like a symphony of controlled chaos. Jess's voice emerged from the intercom system at regular intervals, each update delivered with the same casual tone someone might use to report weather conditions. "Okay, I've got primary air circulation back online, but it's running through the emergency water processing system. Might smell a little funky for a while. Rerouting power from the recreational deck to life support. Sorry, no holotheater tonight. Hey, does anyone know if that old food storage unit on Deck 3 still works? I need somewhere to dump excess heat from the reactor bypass." Each announcement arrived wrapped in the kind of casual confidence that should have been impossible under the circumstances. Korth found himself drawn to the engineering section, where transparent aluminum barriers offered a window into human ingenuity at work. Jess was currently suspended upside down in an access tunnel, her legs the only visible part of her anatomy, while she worked on something deep within the station's mechanical intestines. Sparks occasionally erupted from the tunnel's depths, followed by what sounded like remarkably creative expressions of frustration. Wade appeared beside him, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled like burnt electronics mixed with hope. "Coffee? Figured we might as well stay awake for this." Korth accepted the cup, but didn't drink. Human coffee was approximately as toxic as industrial solvent to his species, but the gesture itself carried warmth. "Is she always like this, Jess?" "Yeah, pretty much." Wade took a sip and winced with the expression of someone consuming necessary poison. "She's just been in worse. Worse than total life support failure in deep space. You ever hear about the Titan Station incident?" Korth shook his head, fascinated despite himself. Reactor went critical during a solar storm. Entire engineering crew evacuated except for Jess. She stayed behind and manually stabilized the core for 6 hours straight while standing in lethal radiation. Wade paused, his expression carrying the weight of witnessed miracles. Didn't even miss her lunch break. A loud clang echoed from the access tunnel, followed by the sound of something heavy surrendering to gravity. Jess's voice emerged from the opening, muffled but triumphant. Found the problem. Whoever installed this coupling was either drunk or trying to kill people. Possibly both. Captain Vorthen's voice carried the tension of command decisions balanced on knife edges. What's the situation? Good news is I can fix it. Bad news is I need to completely rebuild the atmospheric intake manifold using parts that weren't exactly designed for this. How long will that take? Give me 90 minutes and something to eat. All this upside-down work is making me hungry. 90 minutes. Korth consulted the chronometer, where numbers counted down towards suffocation with mechanical precision. They had perhaps 3 hours of breathable air remaining, assuming current consumption rates held steady. Can she really do it? Wade didn't answer immediately. He was watching Jess emerge from the tunnel, her coveralls decorated with new stains, and her expression carrying the cheerful determination of someone who had just discovered an interesting puzzle to solve. You know what the difference is between humans and most other species? Wade's voice carried the weight of observed truth. What? When most people see an impossible problem, they start looking for someone to blame or somewhere to run. When humans see an impossible problem, we start looking for tools. As if summoned by his words, Jess was now extracting what appeared to be half a water recycling unit from a storage locker. She had somehow acquired a welding torch during her subterranean adventure, and was examining the unit with the focused intensity of a surgeon planning complex operations. This is going to be interesting. Her voice carried the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for recreational activities. I'm basically going to turn a water purifier into an air scrubber. It shouldn't work, but the math says it might. The math says it might. Korth felt his breathing sacs constrict with renewed anxiety. Sure, atmospheric processing is just chemistry. Water recycling is just different chemistry. I swap out a few components, adjust the flow rates, and boom. She began attacking the water unit with her tools, each movement precise and purposeful. Improvised life support. The next hour stretched like a lifetime measured in heartbeats and held breath. Korth watched Jess work with a combination of fascination and growing disbelief. She wasn't merely fixing the system. She was rebuilding it from scratch, using components that had never been designed to work together, creating harmony from chaos through sheer force of will and technical expertise. She welded pieces of the water recycler to atmospheric intake pipes, the torch creating brief stars in the artificial twilight of the engineering section. She connected power cables in configurations that violated every safety protocol Korth had ever learned, her movements guided by some internal logic that transcended conventional engineering wisdom. She used that silver emergency sealant to patch connections that should have required precision-manufactured couplings, creating beauty from desperation. And somehow, impossibly, miraculously, it worked. Atmospheric processing online. The station AI's voice carried what sounded like mechanical surprise. Air quality returning to normal parameters. The crimson emergency lighting faded to normal illumination, transforming the station from a cathedral of alarm into a place of ordinary miracles. The screaming alarms fell silent. The background hum of properly functioning life support filled the corridors again, a mechanical lullaby that sang of survival and human ingenuity. Jess emerged from her latest access tunnel, wiping her hands on a rag that was more grease than fabric. She looked around at the assembled crew of aliens who were staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to absolute bewilderment, their faces reflecting the soft glow of restored normalcy. That should hold until rescue arrives. Her voice carried the casual satisfaction of someone who had just completed routine maintenance. Might want to avoid any sudden movements around junction box 7 though. That coupling is held together with good intentions and emergency sealant. How did you do that? Korth heard himself ask the question that had been building in his mind like pressure behind a dam. Jess shrugged and began packing up her tools with the same methodical precision she had used to deploy them. Standard operating procedure. When systems fail, you make new systems out of whatever's available. But the components you used weren't compatible. The power requirements alone should have made it impossible. Should have, yeah. She picked up her toolbox, the metal container somehow heavier with the weight of accomplished miracles. But impossible just means nobody's figured out how to do it yet. She moved toward the door, then paused and looked back with the expression of someone remembering a minor detail. Oh, and you might want to flush the water recycling system before you use it again. I borrowed a few parts from it that were probably important. After she left, the command center remained wrapped in contemplative silence. Finally, Captain Vorthen turned to Wade with the careful curiosity of someone who had witnessed something beyond conventional understanding. Is this normal for human engineers? Wade finished his coffee and stood up, his expression carrying the weight of witnessed wonders. Pretty much. You should see what she can do when she's actually trying. Korth watched the human security officer leave, then turned back to the viewports where space stretched out in all directions. A few hours ago, that darkness had seemed like a death sentence written in vacuum and absolute zero. Now it just looked like space, beautiful and infinite, no longer threatening but simply there. He made a mental note to update his species files on human engineering capabilities. The current entry of adequate seemed somewhat understated, like describing a supernova as bright or a black hole as dense. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small station where a human engineer had just turned impossible into routine with nothing more than spare parts, and an attitude that treated certain death as a minor inconvenience. The universe held its breath no longer. It simply existed, vast and beautiful and conquerable, one improvised solution at a time. Korth decided he really needed to understand humans better, for his own safety, if nothing else. And perhaps, he thought as he watched the star's wheel slowly past the viewport, for the sheer wonder of it all.